Wyrd Realities explores the paranormal, preternatural, and supernatural worlds that surround us. Here we delve into those topics that challenge us to think outside the limitations of realism, where we test the boundaries of imagination and are forced to think outside the confines and restrictions of what is normal. We are the creators, the writers, the artists, and the insane. Welcome to our Wyrd Realities.
Hey everyone, this is Hadley Thorne, and today we are having a podcast on real weird cryptids. Joining us is one of the familiar faces from over at Horror Writers Inc., author D.A. Roberts. You might know him from his Apex Predator or Codename Wild Hunt series, amongst many others. And we also have Cryptid Connection, Logan vs. Kenny creator, and Wyrd News Anchor, Mr. Logan Craft. And join us is Jen Salmons, and I think Alan Gamboa is going to pop in later, and maybe Rich Suji too. So, that was a mouthful, guys. How are y'all doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking.
I'm doing
Hi,
all right.
everybody.
Hello.
How you doing, Jen?
I'm doing okay. Sorry, I'm not looking cute, so no video for me. Sorry.
Jen is our newest Wyrd Realities personality, I should say.
Awesome. It's nice to meet you.
She's pretty awesome. Y'all like her?
Thank you.
Okay.
I use the video despite having a face for radio.
Well, that's kind of what I was thinking for myself today. So, you know.
All right. So, I know, DA, that you recently went to LBL.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I spent 4 days in LBL.
So tell us all about that trip.
LBL is an awesome place. Of course, everybody's familiar with the legend of the Beast of LBL and the famous Dogman attack. There's actually a number of attacks that have happened in that area, but the one that happened in 1982 to the family in the motorhome, that's the one that takes the biggest precedence, and people know about that one the most. But this year, I believe there's already been 8 missing people in LBL.
Wow! Can you give our listeners just a little bit of background on the mobile,
sure.
RV murders?
Well, there's been strange sightings and creatures seen in that area since the first European settlers got in there. Even the Native Americans thought that area was cursed. Back then, it was known as the land between the rivers. It was a large swath of land between the Cumberland and the Kentucky rivers. 1963, the Kentucky Port Authority or something like that, Kentucky Valley Authority, came in and dammed the 2 rivers, and then they created a canal that linked the 2 lakes, so they could use the lakes for large scale barge commerce. And also, they power a couple of really large hydroelectric dams. I'm sorry, it was the Tennessee Valley Authority. Well, when the lakes flooded the area became basically a giant island. Only way in and out is across certain key bridges, and then it became known as the land between the lakes. But the creature sightings did not stop. The Tennessee Valley Authority, under eminent domain, kicked everybody off their land, so there's still the skeletons of old homesteads still out there in the deep woods. You can find cemeteries. But then in 1982, the most famous attack, a family arrived there from somewhere up near Chicago. I can't remember exactly where, but they were leveling their camper. It was a family of 4, and one of these creatures came out of the woods. A dogman creature came out, killed the father pretty gruesomely, tore an arm off, and nearly ripped his head off. The son ran for the camper, and it caught the kid. He was 8 or 9 years old. Killed him at the edge of the camper, and there were claw marks all over the side of the camper where the kid tried to get away. The mother got the door shut and hid the daughter. The daughter was basically a toddler. The creature got inside, and the mother put up a tremendous fight. There was blood all over the interior, claw marks. The mother was missing fingernails where she had fought back. She was, of the bodies, she was the most torn up. But when officers arrived, they found 3 bodies. And it wasn't until they started checking the clothing they realized there was a 4th person. So 2 officers went out into the woods looking for the little girl, hoping to find her alive. But unfortunately, one of the officers felt something dripping on his hat and looked up, and blood drops hit him in the face. They found her body 30 feet up a tree after having been fed on. Military came in, and over the course of the next several days, it's rumored that they killed one of the creatures and lifted it out in a helicopter.
Wow, that's incredible.
It's a
I've
creepy
heard it
story.
before. It's really creepy. Logan, have you been to LBL?
No, I have not.
You have not.
Nope.
Okay. I guess Lauren went, didn't she?
Lori, her mom went. I don't know if Lauren herself went.
I think she did. She went out there one time, I think with Mark Newble and Larry and Kane and Eric. But that's one of their research areas. That's why I was trying to get Kane Michael on tonight, but I guess he didn't make it. So, yeah, that's incredible. So, DA, when you were out there yourself, did you have any hair-tingling experiences of your own?
When I was near the Nickel Cemetery, I could hear something moving in the trees, and I tried to backtrack and get behind it, but I'm not as mobile as I used to be. I walk with a cane now. But I tried to get behind it and get into the trees, but it eluded me. It stayed farther away from me. And then a couple of times at night, I heard something that was pacing us in the trees. But it's a really creepy area. On the way in through Kentucky, because we went on the north end of LBL. On our way in, we would see like dead deer and dead possums, roadkill along the side of the road. When I got into the north end of LBL, I never saw a single animal. I didn't see roadkill. I didn't see deer. I didn't see anything. And just across the lake at the resort we were staying at, there were deer on the grounds of the resort. We were feeding ducks and stuff. There were animals everywhere. But once you crossed into the north end of LBL, I didn't see a thing. In 4 days running around the north end of LBL, I never saw a single animal.
It's just like they came in there and cleaned everything up.
Exactly. And the whole time, you had this kind of oppressive feeling in the air, like you weren't supposed to be there.
That's creepy. I know exactly that feeling you're talking about. There's some places on the Natchez Trace that are like that.
I went back into some really rugged places because the guy I went with was Nick Valente from the North American Dogman Project, and he's got a Hummer, and that thing can cover some territory. We went back into some deep woods spots where you probably couldn't get most vehicles, and we saw some pretty creepy stuff. At one point, I saw something flash from behind a tree, and then by the time we got stopped and I could get turned around to see where it had already dropped down into a ravine. So I didn't have my camera up filming. We were just driving, looking around. But it was moving on two legs. I know that.
Wow. That's crazy.
But I only saw it for just a couple seconds.
Now, I've heard there's another account of a hunter, like a bow hunter that was out there. Is that correct?
Yes, that was not too far from where I was at. He allegedly was out there setting up camp. The deer hunt, was waiting for friends to join him, and they found his broken bow and several expended arrows, and they found his body. I think it was a couple of miles away after it had been dragged through the woods.
Oh.
And his body had been fed on.
Oh, yeah. That's crazy. The thing that got me about that story was the drag, because I don't know any animals that do that.
Well, a mountain lion will drag a body, but it takes a lot of power to drag, a full-grown man.
Yeah.
We don't have mountain lions here in Mississippi. We got bobcats.
We've got mountain lions in Missouri.
We have a lot of bobcats and stuff like that. We do have mountain lions and cougars out here, but few and far between.
You have jaguars in Texas too.
I've heard mountain lions scream close to my campground. That's a hey, let's get the kids and gather them up, get them in the camper kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, so Logan, can you tell us some of your stories? What you got going on? What's your big Bigfoot experience?
Well, my big one was, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago, if you want to call it my sighting or whatever. Which Limpies is an area I have over in Fruitvale, and I was out there one night because I always get reports out of there. So I was parked out there, and at the time I had my red truck, and it had a bed cover on the back. So I would take my chair and sit it on top of the bed cover, and I would sit out there in a power line clearing where I would always get reports from. And this is probably, I want to say 12 or 1 o'clock at night, and it's a full moon behind me. I made sure to put the moon behind me so I could see in front of me. And probably like 45 yards or 40 yards in front of me in the tree line, there's this big thing that just steps out, and it's probably somewhere about 7.5 to 8 foot tall. And I'm talking like, I'm 6'4", and when DA said it earlier, you have that oppressive feeling. I had never felt that feeling before. I always questioned what people were talking about when they had something like that happen. That night, I got that feeling. It stepped out of the wood line, and it just stood there. Now, the other guy I do Cryptid Connection with, Stephen James, I called him on the phone just in case something happened. I had a 45 on me, and I was sitting there going, it's not going to stop whatever the thing is. All I see is solid black. I can't make out any face or anything. It is just solid black. It stands there for about 15 minutes. I'm on the phone the whole time with Stephen. It steps back into the wood line. It does not turn around and step back. It said, no, let's be even more creepy than necessary. I'm going to step straight back into the wood line and disappear. So about 20, 30 minutes go by after that. And you got to remember, I'm sitting on a road there's a road going down, and then so road power line clearing. I'm looking down the road, which is the only way out. There is one street lamp at the very end of this road. And now I have this black thing that leans out of the wood line, blocks the light, will sit there for about 10 seconds, and then lean back into the wood line. It does that for about 30 minutes. The landowner came from behind where that thing was with his four-wheeler. And whenever he turned that corner with all that noise, it disappeared. Never saw it after that.
That makes my hairs on the back of my neck think about just riding your four-wheeler through the woods at night, and there's something like that.
And the thing, okay, so Fruitvale is a very, very country. It has a population of like 413 people, I think. It's mostly all country. This guy has property. He has a house on one end of this place and a house on the other. He would go at like 2 a.m. and walk barefoot through the woods to get to the other house like that. And the whole time his family's sitting there telling him they keep seeing things on the property. And he doesn't believe them. Both of his children saw 2 of them at the same time. That was his youngest, or it was his youngest and his friend. Then his middle child saw one. His oldest child and his girlfriend had a face-to-face with one of them. I mean, the whole area is just absolutely, I get reports all the time. So the fact that I've only seen it once kind of irritates me, because at the time I didn't have the equipment to actually get a picture or a video of what happened.
Were you out there, Logan, specifically for that?
Yes. Well, okay. That area, I get orb reports, I get paranormal reports, I get and Bigfoot. I get Bigfoot more than anything. Do you remember? So I don't know where everybody lives. I live in Texas. We had the snowpocalypse in February, right?
I saw that. Yes.
Awful. I was talking about this earlier with some Bigfoot people. The week before the snowpocalypse, I had 8 reports in 1 week out of Mineola. There's like a 25 mile stretch in between the two places. So the area is active. Whatever's going on there, it's active.
There's a lot of sightings coming out of the Texas Big Thicket area too.
Yeah. Yep. And I think it has to do with all the rain. We're getting a lot more rain here, well, not now, but at the time when all of my activity was picking up and I was getting reports, it was raining nonstop. Everything was flooded.
Pushing them out of the swamps.
Exactly. They were going from the floodplains, the low places, nobody went. Now they're having to go up to high land, dry land, and there's a correlation between the temperature and the rain that picks up all the activity.
And movement of like deer population and elk.
If we had elk, we have a lot of deer, we have a lot of pigs. no elk.
Well, we've got elk here in southern Missouri. They reintroduced elk down near Eminence, Missouri, and the population has just exploded. And so did the sightings in that area down near Eminence. In fact, the population has exploded to the point that the state of Missouri is going to start authorizing limited hunts on the elks because they're becoming nuisance. But I know a lot of farmers that have said they noticed when the elk population started increasing, they started losing less livestock. But the sightings increased.
Well, I just think Bigfoot must not like pork.
I have heard accounts of them attacking and killing wild hogs.
I've heard a lot of people talk about them. They basically go out there and football tackle the pig, and then they'll like grab it. And a pig doesn't have a neck, but apparently this thing snaps its neck. So the amount of force something would have to do that is just.
I read an account from a deer.
The amount of wild pigs in Texas.
Yeah,
I read an account where a hunter in a stand spotted a Bigfoot grab a wild hog by the hind legs and smack it around a tree.
Yep,
that'll pre-tenderize your pork for you.
Yeah.
Hey Logan, Stephen Hill wants to know if you think you saw Limpy.
That's the one I call Limpy. Originally, we got the tracks. I got tracks a year before I had a sighting. And the tracks looked funny. I have the picture somewhere. I'd have to go find them. But the tracks looked funny. So the joke was this thing must have a limp when it walks because the feet kind of look deformed. So we just call it Limpy. Is it the same one? I don't know. I'm not going to say I know. But
could be.
When you had, I'm sorry, Logan, I have another question if you don't mind.
Yes.
I'm pretty new to this. I'm not going to fib and act like I know anything about it. So where do people go to make these reports to you? Like if I were to see something, by the way, I'm in Kansas City, so I'm in Missouri as well. Yes.
Awesome. I'm in Springfield.
Hello, fellow Mizzou.
In my case,
yes,
this area, it's one of those things, oh, he's the Bigfoot guy. Eventually everybody starts to call you. A lot of my reports actually come from work. I'll be working, people will be talking, and I'll mention I'm going to the Jefferson Bigfoot conference. I'm going to a Bigfoot camp out in Fout on Halloween. And they'll go, oh, you believe in Bigfoot? And I go, yeah. And because I'm fancy, I have little business cards that, and so I'll hand them a business card, whatever. And I'm like, look, if you or anybody else has a weird thing, it doesn't have to be just Bigfoot. I've done paranormal. I've done Bigfoot. I've had people come to me with what's it called? Rake and knot deer. And I'm just kind of like, okay, now I have another thing to be scared of out in the woods. So there's a lot of weird stuff that goes on here. And basically, in my case, people just know I'm the Bigfoot guy here. I have like a 3-town stretch here that if anything weird happens, eventually within a day or two, I get the message to go check it out. And in other cases, there is like the BFRO database where you can go and put in your report, and then they will, most of the time, they will send somebody out to follow up on it and see if it's legitimate,
Okay.
Otherwise, you would just go on Facebook and find a group, and then go on the group and say, hey, is anyone around me, whatever you want to call it.
Okay. Do you guys find that Facebook is a great way to do that? Like I'm not a member of any of the groups, but I'm interested, and I watched Finding Bigfoot. That's pretty much my extension of what I know. I'm not great at any of this, but I definitely am interested. And Heather, I think you should share your experience too, because I believe my friends, and your experience was something that I was like, okay, like you said, things to be scared of in the woods. Now I've got another one.
Well, one night, some friends and I were out on the Natchez Trace. There's a place called River Bend, and it's obviously a bend in the river. and where we were, you can have like picnics and stuff. So we were like we had like a drum circle, and I had this Native American drum. It was just a fabulous drum that this Native American man made. I'd gotten, and so I was drumming, and one of my friend's husband we had bonded over Bigfoot because he had been seeing and researching Bigfoot since he was a child, and so he comes up to me and he said, "Would you like to see a Bigfoot?" And I said, "Well, sure. I mean, who doesn't, right?" And he said, "Okay." Well, so he got a spotlight, and he went and he showed me a place across the river with was a big tree, like a big oak tree, and there was a shadow. And he said, "Do you see that shadow?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Okay, I want you to watch this." He goes, "I'm going to turn the spotlight off, and that I'm going to turn it back on real quick, and you're going to see that shadow rearrange itself." And I kid you not, it did. So, was it a Bigfoot? I don't know. But I saw something that was very large and very, very black. And when you talk about the blackness, it's like it has no, it's just so flat black. It's just hard to describe. It's like it has no reflection at all. You can't see fur. It's just like, and I guess that's kind of their camouflage. It is kind of like a shadow. But at this same place, and this was one of the things that it really, really, really makes me nervous to talk about. Just because it was such a weird experience. And I did not know anything. I had not been researching at the time. But we were out there another night with, just sitting around being, little weird pagan people. And there was, I was telling my friend, I said, "Do you see that? It's like the shadows are crawling across the ground." And she sees it too. We talked, and we were just, again, being witchy people. And so we were just sitting there with our little lights on. Well, years later, I hear an account, I think it was from Kumbo, and he was talking about how they will do that along the ground. And this was at the same place that, I'd had my sighting. So it just makes me, like I said, hair-raising, kind of nervous, like, oh my God, can you imagine if that was what that was that I saw? I don't know if it was, because I didn't think anything of it. Logan?
Going back on the whole crawling kind of thing, I just got a report I want to say a couple months ago, and it was out of Olympi's, and the people said that before they bush hog their pasture, which is basically before they mowed their pasture, these things would walk up and slap on the house. They just walk up. They said after they bush hogged it and there was no more grass to kind of cover the majority of them, they would spider crawl up to the house, slap it, and then spider crawl as fast as they could away.
That's so creepy. The spider crawl thing really creeps me out.
Yes, yeah.
But I'll go back and say this. So later that night, when I was out there at Riverbend with Joey and my other friends, he came up to me later and he said, "3 just ran. They just swam across the river. Do you want to go see them?" And I said, "No, thank you." But my friend Erin did go, and she said that Heather, I don't know what I saw, but I kid you not, there were 3 very skinny, tall things that I saw, and you could smell that musky scent in the air. And the creepiest thing about that was it wasn't an unfamiliar smell. And I mean, I've been going deer hunting with my dad, out in the woods my whole life, and I would always think, I've always been, very, very interested in cryptids, but I would always think there's a Bigfoot watching me. So I don't know. I'm glad I don't go out in the woods that much anymore, though. But yeah, so that's my story.
I have to walk with a cane, and I still go. And I probably will, even if I ultimately wind up in a wheelchair. I'll just get one of those wheelchairs that have like tank tracks on it, and I'll still go.
What is your motivation behind that? I'm just curious.
Me?
Like, why do you want to? Where did that start?
I've been interested in cryptids since I was a little kid. Back in the early and mid 70s, I would watch the old Leonard Nimoy In Search Ofs.
Okay.
and just kind of started a lifelong interest. And later, as a teenager, when I got my driver's license, I lived outside of Lebanon, Missouri, and it's a rural community and still largely is. It's only about 10, 12,000 people. But I would drive the back country roads and just look for things. And then I got to where I would stop and talk to people, because my dad said I could sell ice to Eskimos, that I could talk to anybody. And I would just stop if I saw somebody sitting on their porch and get on my truck and go up and strike up a conversation. And there was a little town here outside of Lebanon called Sleeper. It's what we refer to as a poke and plumb town. You ever poke your head out the window, you plumb through the town. And it's a little bitty town, and there's a little general store there, and I would drive by there and sometimes get soda, and there was usually a couple old fellows sitting out in rocking chairs on the front porch of that general store. And I asked them one day, I said, you guys know any stories about Bigfoot? And one of them looked at me and goes, son, you go back in that store and buy us a couple of them soda pops, and we'll tell you all the stories we know. And no better investment have I ever made in my life, because I heard a lot of Ozarks lore I never would have ever heard before.
Very cool.
Very cool.
And I just love doing it. It's something that inspires me. It's something I love to do, not just for my books, but for myself. And if I happen to catch something on video while I'm out there, awesome. If I don't, I still had a fantastic time.
What's the best video you have?
About almost 2 years ago, my best friend Steve and I and our wives were going to go out for dinner. And there's an old abandoned campground about 35 miles from here called the Joe Bald Recreation Area that the Army Corps of Engineers shut down around the year 2000 when some people went missing. And every effort to reopen that campground since then has been shut down hard by the Army Corps of Engineers. There's actually 2 parks in that area they've done that to. One, they bulldozed the entrances so you can't get in there anymore. But I'll get to that one later. But so Steve and I and our wives were going to go out to eat. And I said, hey, I'm writing a book called The Lakeview Man. And some of the scenes take place in the old Joe Bald empty campground. You want to go down there and shoot a promo video before we go eat? He's like, yeah, hell yeah. We were going to go down to Branson anyway to eat. So we just drove to Joe Bald and shot about a 2-minute video and jumped back in the vehicle and went on our way. We didn't see nothing. Well, flash forward about a year and a half later, I'm doing a show that I used to do with my friend Roger. It's a show called The Nightmare Hunter. And I was mentioning that video. He goes, well, let's just play it. It's only a couple minutes long. And one of the guys in the audience, a guy named Thomas Whitney, goes, hey, there's something behind one of those trees watching you guys. And I'm like, no, there's not. I've watched that video 100 times. I haven't seen anything. And he goes, no, I'm telling you, give us a time index. There's something behind that tree. Well, I had a couple of buddies of mine who do video editing, isolate the image. And at about 8.5, 9 feet up, there's a head sticking out behind the tree. And you can see a hand with claws on it on the side of the tree, and it's leaning out and watching it. And when I pan my flashlight back, you can literally see it lean back behind the tree. And it's a big tree. So I had them isolate images, and I sent the images to Nick Valente at the North American Dogman Project. And he said, from what he could tell, it was probably one of the best examples of a Type 3 dogman he'd ever seen.
Wow.
And we didn't know it was there.
Can you explain what a Type 3 is?
A Type 3 looks more. There's supposedly 7 variants of the Dogman, but the Type 3 they refer to as a soldier. It's big and broad, but it looks like it's got a like a Saint Bernard, not a Saint Bernard, a German Shepherd type head.
Sorry, we don't normally do cryptids, so most of our people might not be familiar with it.
Let me check my images, and I will see if I can send you an image of the 7 types of Dogman. I think I've got it handy, to be honest. So give me just a moment.
Yeah, at first I was completely against Dogman. I mean, just from a physiology standpoint, I couldn't see how Dogman would work. But I have a friend that I believe is very credible in what he does. And he got a picture out of Brown Springs. And in the picture,
is a crazy area.
Yeah, it's a fun place to go as long as you're sure you're not going to get murdered. But
I never go anywhere like that unarmed.
Logan's from Texas. He didn't go anywhere unarmed.
I take a military grade everything with me. And he has a picture and it's a really strange picture. And because he also has a video, he didn't know they were in it. He took screenshots of the video. He didn't know that they were in it until he went back and watched it. But he has a large figure that is your stereotypical Bigfoot type shape. But on both sides of the Bigfoot are perfect dog head looking creatures. That's the only thing that I've ever seen. And of course, I've never seen DA's picture or anything. But as far as what I've seen about Dogman, that his video and his pictures are the only thing I've seen that made me go, okay, there's something out there. Alan's sideways.
Hey, Alan, you're sideways.
Hey, Alan.
I'm driving.
Alan has had a little bit of trauma getting here today. He had a flat tire. Oh, where'd he go?
Oh, I thought he got attacked by bears and was having to fight them off.
No. Well, so tell us about Brown Springs, because I know that the three of us are familiar with it, but I know Jen's not, and probably some of the people who are listening might not be.
It's, for me personally, Brown Springs is not. A lot of people that I talk to say Brown Springs is a creepy area. It's scary, and it puts off this vibe of just don't go in there. To me, it doesn't have that vibe. But the further and further you go into it, the weirder the stuff gets. We walked there. I don't know how far DA's been into it, but you go so far back and there's a bridge that has been discontinued. It's abandoned. It's got spray paint all over it, whatever. When you hit that bridge, walk about another 1.5 or 2 miles back through the thorns and the brush, and you'll come to this big spot where it's like a floodplain. It's just mud. And when we found it, there were large barefoot footprints all around the perimeter. But on the inside of that perimeter were little footprints. And when I say little, I'm talking like maybe like a woman's size 6 or 8. You know, it's smaller foot. But it's interesting to me that, and Bigfoot structures are iffy anyway, but if you know what a teepee is, you know, there were big teepees made with little teepees inside the big teepees. It was almost like it was a nursery, or they were teaching them how to make these structures. But on top of that, there are no real trees in the inside of this perimeter, but all throughout the mud are sticks, and I'm talking like little sticks to branch size, you know, actual good size, stuck in the mud about a foot, you know, on the big ones, a foot, the little ones halfway stuck into the ground, just poking straight up. So there's another part of Brown Springs that we call Murder Camp. When we went to it, we were walking in, and once again, there's one way into it, one way out. There's brand new pots and pans. There's brand new stuff people bought for camping thrown all over the place like they left in a hurry. Well, you walk back in there, they left a brand new tarp. They left their clothes. They left, we found a bag with makeup in it. You know, we found all this stuff back there, and it's like they got up and left, and they didn't care what they left. So we just call it Murder Camp because we thought it was funny. But I think there's a weird stigma to Brown Springs. I don't know. DA probably has a different view on it than me, though.
Well, wasn't there some murders out there?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. There's, yeah.
Okay, DA, tell us about the murders.
The most famous account that I know of Brown Springs, it was a young couple that drove down there to have some romantic time alone. And while in the process of having said romantic liaison, apparently they were on the hood of the vehicle. Something came up behind, grabbed the male, and basically tore his head off and threw him and killed the female as well. And it's apocryphal whether or not it did anything to the female.
Hey, Mark.
Hi, Mark.
Hi, Mark.
So,
Hi, Mark.
everybody say hey. So, let me ask you this. I thought that, like, wasn't there a bunch of, like, news reporters and stuff that had shown up when that murder happened?
Within minutes of it happening, as soon as the police got there, they were there pretty much immediately, and they had tarps over body parts. So, some versions of the story there is, shall we say, sexual congress that happened between the Bigfoot and the female unwillingly, and in some versions of the story, there's not. But some people say that it raped her, but that's hard to say. I mean, I don't know, but there's multiple versions of the story going on out there. But the reporter's story stayed consistent for years, and that as he showed up, the police tried to keep him out of the area, but there were body parts literally everywhere that they were covering up, including a dismembered head.
Wow. That's kind of crazy. So I know we've talked about the LBL murders, and we've talked about the Brown Springs murder now, but this is for you and Logan. What is the most scary Bigfoot story or dogman story that you've heard?
Well, I have two. One's a historical, and one was an account that was given to me.
Can you share?
Sure. The historical one is Port Chatham, Alaska, which was a town that was a flourishing town, had a cannery. They were producing fish and catching fish, canning it, and shipping it all over the world. People from the town started going missing when they'd go out in the woods to hunt. And sometimes they would find body parts floating out into the bay from some of the streams and the rivers. The Native Americans told them the area was cursed and to stay out of there, but they built the town anyway. Well, pretty soon, large bipedal hairy creatures were coming into town at night trying to get into people's houses. And the people that worked in the cannery said, do something about this or we're not coming back to work. So Port Chatham, the city of Port Chatham hired professional hunters to go in the woods to solve the problem. Professional hunters didn't come back. So they abandoned the town, and there's still portions of the town that are there, including machinery from the cannery. They just basically, by 1945, 1946, they just walked away from the town. Done. And the ruins of it is still there, and it's the only town I've ever heard of that's been abandoned over a Bigfoot attacks.
That's crazy. Is that the place that, like, people still can go out there, but I think I saw a video of it. Maybe
the only way to get there is by boat.
Check.
Yeah, the only way to get there is by boat. It's on the end of the Kenai Peninsula.
And what's a personal account that someone told you?
This was given to me by a friend of mine, and as a guy I trust, so I believe it happened. He plays Native American drums at powwows, and he was telling some people when they were camping up in Idaho. He said, "This is a cryptid area. This is an area where there are Bigfoot. Don't wander away from camp at night." And they're like, "Oh, bullshit! That doesn't exist. You're full of it." He goes, "Do you really want an experience?" And they're like, "Yeah." So he got his drum out and he started playing and singing. And within a few minutes of him playing the drum, there were eyes surrounding the camp, watching them in the darkness. And everybody was like back to back, freaking out. And as soon as he stopped, one by one, they just faded out.
Well, I don't know if you know this, DA, but I study shamanism, and one of the things that you do is the drum can set your brain on a whole different level.
Yes, the drum's amazing.
Yeah, and it'll put you in the space where you can do shamanic journey.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you go to the lower world in a shamanic journey, you go through like a knot in a tree, like the holes in trees, like that. And that's one of the things I've always found fascinating. I was talking with one of my friends who takes classes with me, and she had mentioned that, because we were talking about Bigfoot, she said, well, I said, I just really wonder about it. She goes, well, I don't know why you're wondering about it. We use trees to go on shamanic journey. Why couldn't they? We were talking about trees and portals. And the imagination, the writer in me just loves that thought. And so when I hear the stories about how the drum will lure them in, and I know my own experience with the drum, I kind of wonder if it puts them in some type of, if the beat just kind of draws them in, if that makes sense.
It's curiosity.
Curiosity?
Yeah, curiosity.
A lot of campers have reported when they played music, it drew attention, or the laughter of children will draw them in.
crying, laughing. If it's children, if you really, I've had a lot of friends do this. Iron Maiden, go out there and blast metal music, and they will get pissed off beyond belief.
Not fans of Iron Maiden, are they?
I just they're more of like Metallica fans or something. I don't know what's going on there, but
Sinead O'Connor.
I think they like smooth jazz or something, but I have a lot of friends that they go out and they will play Led Zeppelin. They'll play what's the one song? Immigrant Song, where it does the that.
Yeah,
that
I'll throw
part.
rocks at them for that.
Yeah, exactly. and you have all this stuff happening, and it's weird because I'm the kind of person that's like, if I go out there, I want to draw them in. I will die for science. I don't care. And people always say, don't play the baby crying noise, because they will come in and they will try to figure out what's crying. And I'm sitting there going, play the baby crying noise, you know? And I had an idea a while ago after I went to Boykin Springs. We had some activity there that was interesting. I wanted to go buy an Aztec death whistle and see what would happen if I sat out there and did that at night. Because if you know what an Aztec death whistle is, it sounds like someone screaming as loud as they can possibly scream. That would be interesting. The idea is to pick up their curiosity and bring them to you.
I had a couple of thoughts on trying, because I don't think call blasting really works. How do you know you're not playing a mating call, and do you have a plan for a amorous Bigfoot coming out of the woods?
Yeah.
I don't do call blasting, but one thing I've wanted to try was like predator calls, because I've used predator calls to lure in coyotes and other predators before. Because there used to be a bounty on coyotes, and when I was a teenager and in my early 20s, we made pretty good money on the weekends going out taking out coyotes. But the thing is, I wondered what predator calls would do for like a dog man or a Bigfoot. And the other thing I thought about was getting like some of the documentaries and recording just sections of the documentaries where they have chimpanzees in distress, do distressed primate calls to see what would happen.
Yeah. Because the idea is you're playing with the fact that these are they're an undiscovered primate. They're an animal. You're going to want to try to draw them in like you would draw in a normal animal. You're going to go, okay, what do you think their food source is? Play a distressed rabbit call. You want a coyote to come in? Distressed rabbit.
Works every time.
If you want, something that would bring in a normal predator. But you also got to remember that sense of smell comes into play here. And one thing that I've learned that is actually very interesting to me, there's two things. One's called honeypotting, and the other one is you just burn sage. What you do is you just get a metal can, fill it with honey, throw it in your campfire, let it burn. And that will make the entire area around you smell like honey. If you got bears around you, I'd be careful doing that. But it literally will draw in animals you don't think it would draw in. It'll draw in armadillos. It'll draw in raccoons. It'll draw in. And the idea in my mind is if it's drawing in these animals, a more intelligent animal is going to want to know what's going on. Another thing, and I learned this from Jeremy Gibson. We went out one time and we were getting activity. He had 2 big bundles of red sage. And he threw it in the fire. And I sit there and go, why the hell are you doing that? Like, you're wasting the sage. And he goes, just give it a few minutes. Every animal in that area that was close enough started sneezing. It's a weird. I never thought that would work, but we had deers, we had raccoons, and they were sitting there just going, yeah, and I guess if it works, it works.
Well, what do y'all think about the mimicry that it's reported that they can do?
Yes.
I totally agree. They can definitely mimic sound. There's been accounts of them mimicking voices.
Yeah,
like if you step out on your back porch every evening and say, "Honey, it's time to eat," at some point you might hear, "Honey, it's time to eat," coming out of the woods.
I've heard them calling people's dogs,
Mm-hmm.
which as a dog person, that scares me.
One count, I don't remember where, I think it was from Northern California. They would go out in the evening to feed their chicks every night, and then one night they were walking toward the chicken pen, and they heard, "Hey, chickie, 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 chickie," from coming from the trees. Like, ooh, maybe I ought to go back in the house.
Well, have y'all ever heard anything like that when you've been out?
I've heard what they refer to as the 800-pound hoot owl. I've heard an owl call that was obviously from something much larger than an owl.
I haven't ever heard words. I've never heard anything like do at least somewhat intelligible sentence. When me and Jeremy would go out, we would go out every weekend, and he had a call that he made himself. Basically, he took two different birds and tried to tie their calls into one. Nothing should answer that call because it's not natural. It was a man-made call. When we would go into the area, he would do it. We would get a response, and it would be 5 times as loud, and it would be drawn out longer than anything with a normal human lung capacity could do. We would leave the area. We wouldn't do the call. Leaving the area, it would do it itself. And it did that for about 4 or 5 weeks in a row. And then we started, COVID hit, and we quit going out as much because everything got messed up. But that right there was enough to tell me that it does mimic if it hears it enough.
So
I'd agree with that.
this is just my personal question. Since COVID happened, how do you think that's impacted Bigfoot's activity? Has he gotten, because I know for a while there when it first started, everybody was, social distancing. There were animals everywhere. They really just started, I guess, feeling more comfortable about coming out because there weren't as many people around. And do you think that, were there more Bigfoot sightings during that time?
Yep. I think that when COVID started, I'm from East Texas. We're all stubborn. When COVID hit and they were like, go home. If you're not essential, go home. We didn't go home. We went hunting. We went fishing. We went camping. We went mudding. We did everything that they told us not to do.
Same thing here.
But the thing is, you're no longer doing that on the weekend. They're giving you Monday through Friday to go out there and play around. I know.
Fishing 7 days a week.
Exactly. And in my area, I started getting more reports when COVID happened because these people that got laid off or these people that got half the week off were out in the woods more. They were trying to be more active because I'm sitting at home and I've gained 50 pounds because I ate nothing but chocolate. Well, they started going back out to the woods, and now you start getting more of these reports. And it's not just Bigfoot. There's more reports of everything. Hi, Jennifer. And COVID, in a way, has increased Bigfoot, but it's a weird balance because the more reports you get, the more you have to sit there and balance out which ones are fake, which ones are real, who can you trust. And chocolate milk forever, Jennifer.
Absolutely. Love my chalky milk.
I don't have any right now. I'm sad.
Me too. I'm out. Got to go to the store.
So let me ask y'all this. When it comes to hoaxing in the Bigfoot community, why do you think so many people will hoax? Because
Attention.
Attention. It gets you attention. And I say this a lot and I get yelled at. 99% of Bigfoot is ego.
He's not wrong.
It's all ego. I want to be the next Bob Gimlin. That is all there is to it. If I can go out and spend 5 minutes faking a Bigfoot where it took you 5 years just to see your first one that you think was an actual encounter, I'm going to spend the 5 minutes and I'm going to get my 15 minutes of fame. you know, I'm here long enough to, I want to get a media coverage. I want to be a speaker for something. I want to make my money. I want to get out. That's what Bigfoot has become. Finding Bigfoot. What's that one show? Mountain Monsters. Oh, God.
Oh my God.
Mountain Monsters, Finding Bigfoot.
I think those shows do more damage
They do.
to cryptozoology than they help.
They do.
Because it makes everybody look like a bunch of idiots that never find anything, that are just out running around the woods in ATVs, making hooting calls and beating on trees.
Yep.
And that's not cryptozoology. That's not how true researchers do it.
No. And there's a thing I say where if you go to a Bigfoot conference, you can look at the crowd and you can say, those guys are real, those guys are fake. That person is there to get attention. That person's there because they want to prove an unidentified creature. But one thing that you need to be careful of is if you do go out and try to do any kind of research at all during a conference, I always say put 50 miles at least minimum in between you and that conference, because that entire weekend you're going to have people out there, oh, I'm going to do a call. And then you're going to have one person on this side of the valley doing a call. They're going to be over here going, oh my God, we got a call back. And then all night long, it's going to be two people going back and forth.
Or tree knocking Morse code back and forth.
Tree knocking. Mm-hmm.
I don't do tree knocks. I don't do calls. My whole thing is observation.
Yeah.
Look left, right, up, and down. I mean, you just never know what, it might be up a tree. It might be crawling past you in the bushes. Yep. But if you're out there making all kinds of racket, the only thing you're making there, I think you're doing, is guaranteeing it knows where you're at and it doesn't want to be near you.
Yep.
Well, Logan, I didn't get to you. What's the experience that you've heard about or had someone share with you, had yourself, that you think is like incredibly frightening?
It would be the one at Limpy's that the oldest son had with his girlfriend. It was sometime during the winter, and somebody didn't pay the electric bill or gas bill or something. Anyway, they were living in a camper essentially, and they didn't have any heat to the camper. So they decided to, both of them go out, and they had like one of those small mid-range size, like a Ranger kind of size truck, right? Ford Ranger or whatever. And they got in it, and it was her in the passenger seat, him in the driver's seat. All they did was crank it, let the heater run long enough to get it warm in the truck, and they killed the truck. She had a dog, like a small dog, in her lap, okay, and they were all asleep. When she was asleep, her head was up against the window like this. She said she woke up because when the dog was growling, it was facing towards the window.
Hold on, you froze. You got to repeat that.
Okay.
She was sleeping?
She's sleeping, right? Heads up on the window. The dog starts growling towards the window, and it wakes her up. The boyfriend is still asleep. So when the dog's growling towards the window, she does this and looks out the window. And whatever it is, she drew me a picture of it. I'd have to find it. But its face is pressed up against the glass right by hers. This thing is apparently leaned over the truck. Its arms are over the cab of the truck, looking down like that into the truck, with its face pushed up against the glass where hers is. When she turns around and sees it, she screams. I mean, I'd probably say some things too, but
I think that would be a complete bowel cleansing moment.
And so she starts screaming. When she screams, the dog barks. When the dog barks, this thing that's looking through the window starts screaming and yelling. The boyfriend wakes up, looks over, starts screaming and yelling. This thing, when it pushes off the truck, moves the entire truck a few inches, like maybe 6 or 7, whatever. It moves it a few inches, pushing off of the truck to get away. This is the same area I was talking about earlier, where I was talking about the bush hogging going on, where they would do the spider crawl. This is the same area. And it took off into that field and back towards Limpy's. To this day, from what I was told, that boyfriend refuses to go into the woods or anything like the woods after dark. He does not feel comfortable, and he does not want to be there. Her, on the other hand, she's kind of like me. She was, at first, she was scared, but then she turned around and now she's like, I want to know more. I want to know more, you know? But to me, that's the closest thing you're ever going to get to a face-to-face.
That was pretty damn close.
Yeah, that's like an inch of glass.
Yeah.
That's
Quarter
great.
inch.
And you got to remember, if that thing wanted in that truck, it could have gotten that truck no problem whatsoever.
That's the thing, that when I hear these stories about them turning the doorknobs, or they could just push it and the door plate fall in. So I always think, well, if it really wanted to get in, it would.
I have this, the way I think about it is, unless you get one that is just, it's pissed off that day, or it's just a one evil Bigfoot out of all the Bigfoots. They're more curious than anything. They want to see what's going on. And you got to keep in mind that it's the whole, we want to know what you're doing, but you're scared of us because you're told that we're not supposed to exist. So when you see us, oh God, you're going to freak out. What am I going to do? I'm going to freak out and run back into the woods. You know, I just wanted to make you some cookies and say hello, neighbor. But that, and then you have, of course, the people that go out and they're instantly like, I'm going to shoot it. As soon as I see it, I'm going to shoot it. I'm going to shoot it. To me, for the majority of them, they know what a firearm is. They know what a firearm does. They might not know what it is, but they know its function. When that thing gets pointed, when it makes the noise, something dies. You know, you got to think about it as Bigfoot was here when the natives were here. Before all the white man came and, you know, settled America, Bigfoot was watching the Indians. If you go look at a map of old Indian trails, and you place it.
Sorry,
you're good. Place that trail map over where sightings come from, and a majority of your sightings are based on old Indian foot trails. These things were watching them and learning what they were doing. They are an intelligent species. I don't think that we're going to make a Dell laptop and have a Zoom meeting intelligent. But if they wanted to make a hand tool, I believe that they could make a basic hand tool. Chimpanzees, monkey, apes can make hand tools. They make spears, Now, I went off on a tangent, but that was my tangent.
That's what this is about. Y'all can go off on tangents. So, that's crazy. What is the one thing that you think that the government is covering up?
I think the government has known about these creatures for a long time.
Yeah.
And why do you think that they're covering it up?
Because of the panic it would cause. I mean, people wouldn't go in the woods. And look what happened to the logging industry over the spotted owl in Oregon. I mean, it'll shut down major industries. It'll cost industries billions of dollars. It would just, not only that, and we would have to stop encroaching into their territory because we're encroaching on an endangered species. There are lots of reasons. Plus, also, this is my personal theory. Logan, you can disagree with me if you choose, but I think going back to Teddy Roosevelt's book, The Wilderness Hunter, he wrote about an incident called the Bauman incident. Bauman was a trapper, and his partner and him went up into the woods and in an area the Native American told them was a bad area to go to. One of them wound up getting killed by a Bigfoot, and Bauman escaped with his life. I think, and a lot of people that I've talked to also agree, that Bauman was actually Teddy Roosevelt, and he changed the name because he had political aspirations. Because I've known a lot of those backwoods mountain men type guys, and they don't give the kind of detail in the story that Teddy Roosevelt got in the Bauman incident. There was deep detail that would only come with somebody that gave an elaborate story. Most of those guys, those backwood guys, will say, "I went up there camping, something killed my partner, I got the hell out of there." Very little more than that. They might give them a little detail about what they thought it was, but that would be it. So I think Bauman was Teddy Roosevelt. Flash forward, Teddy Roosevelt becomes president. What does Teddy Roosevelt do? He creates the national park system to keep people out of huge tracts of wilderness area.
Yep.
And again, what Logan was saying, if you look at those wilderness areas, a lot of them are at major junctions of Native American trails.
That's fascinating. What both of y'all have said, I've never thought about it like that before, but you're right.
So I think the government's known about them for a long time. And even if somebody were to come forward and quote unquote prove the species tomorrow, the government would go, oh, that's really cool, because they're not going to admit they've known about it, because if they do, that makes them culpable for every disappearance that ever happened.
Uh-huh.
And that brings me to the missing 411 phenomenon.
Well, I love those books. Love that series.
So, how do you think that ties into Bigfoot, or even if it does, or do you think it's something totally different?
Logan, you want to take this one?
I think there's a good portion of the missing 411, which I haven't read any of the books. I've watched the series.
The books are fantastic.
But from everything that I've heard or read on the internet, not the actual book, or everything I've seen in the show, there is a large portion of those disappearances that could possibly be Bigfoot. There's a lot of them that I look at and go, something happened here. There's one with a hunter, and I forgot what they were hunting for, but it was like a father, a son or something, and then a couple other people, and they spaced out so far apart from each other. And the oldest one, I guess the dad or whatever, just disappears out of nowhere. That was the strangest one to me, because they're like, I don't know, so many, like 40 yards or something away. I can't remember. But a guy that big, a guy that old, a full-grown man, does not just disappear without making any noise at all, without any struggle. So things like that, I'd lean towards there's something Bigfooty going on here, or something like that. There's other ones, like I said, I haven't paid attention to missing 411 in a while, but
can I ask a rookie question? Why are some Bigfoots or whatever, dog man, why would some be more aggressive? Like, we started kind of this conversation with, there is these murders that have happened and they're gruesome, and heads being decapitated and those kind of things. Why are some like that and some are like the window? You know what I mean? Where she just turns and now she wants to know more. I mean, if he wanted to do damage, he could have, he didn't. So what do you think? Does testosterone play into this? I don't know. I'm just curious what you guys think.
If you go out into the woods, like let's say you went up into Yosemite and you went hiking and you ran into a grizzly bear, 9 times out of 10, you're going to go your way and the grizzly's going to go its way. There's going to be that one time when the grizzly's either in a horrible mood, is sick, or just really hungry. If it's close to hibernation time, you're going to get a missing hiker. I think it's very similar with Bigfoot. I think it's all about the perspective. It's all about the conditions. If it's a certain time of year and game is lean, long pig's back on the menu. If you stumble in and disrupt its kill, or you do something to piss it off, I think you very well could, you take a shot at one, I think all bets are off. And by the same token, it's got to be an opportunistic hunter like any other hunter. Every species of predator out there will go for the easiest kill. And if it's trying to catch a deer that can run at 40 miles an hour and it looks over and sees some guys in Birkenstocks with iPod on, bipping along, not paying any attention, listening to Fleetwood Mac, guess which
listening to Iron Maiden.
Yeah, listen to Iron Maiden. Guess which one's easier to catch? The guy in the Birkenstocks is looking pretty easy right there.
Right.
And you said testosterone. In a lot of these cases, you hear about missing hikers or whatever, it's a male that goes missing. You got alpha versus, alpha. I walk into your living room, I'm going to put a 12 gauge through you. You're in its house when you go out there.
or if you've got a young male that's trying to prove itself.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, and there's tons of Native American lore where they talk about them coming into their villages and just grabbing somebody and running off with them.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times it was female, but it wasn't always. Sometimes it was a child. Sometimes it was a grown man.
You go and you look at these Native American stories, and some of them are like, oh yeah, these are our friends, our brothers, forest spirits, all that.
Just another tribe up in the mountains.
You go to a tribe 40 miles away. Oh yeah, they're cannibals. They eat us. I think
about that, because to me, a cannibal is a human.
Yeah.
So people who will say that Bigfoot, isn't human will say, oh, it's a cannibal. And it's like, well, are they eating each other?
We don't know. They could be.
They could be. It's the idea that people want to personalize Bigfoot. It makes Bigfoot less scary if you can picture it as a human. Imagine it as a Neanderthal. So basically, in the Indians' mindset, this is our brother that he's more attuned to the earth or something. Well, he's coming and eating us.
The Alaskans refer to it as the hairy man.
Yeah. Yep. I mean,
although there are more people that go missing in the Alaskan Triangle than pretty much anywhere else.
Yeah. Yeah, like Glenn said, it depends how you look at it.
I think they're somewhere on the hominid tree. I think they're either an offshoot of the hominin, which is the humans of that, or of the hominid, which at some point was a great ape. But somewhere along there, we've got a common ancestor.
Well, you remember there was a DNA study that came out in the last probably 5 years, where it was discussing that the Aborigines in Australia have a different DNA sequence than you or I do. And to me, a lot of the drawings that you see from first hand encounters of people who, they look very Aboriginal. From the dark skin, I mean, they have the long hair that the Aborigines don't have, but they do have similar, the wider nose, the leathery looking skin. And that's one of the parallels that I made. And a lot of the, again, and people have to realize I have a very active imagination. I write fantasy books for, that's what I do. So when I look at this stuff, that's the way I'm looking at it. But a lot of the old Aboriginal, medicine man, shaman types, a lot of the abilities that are attributed to Bigfoot is the same thing that these legends say about these people, from covering large distances in, a short amount of time, to being able to use trees as a method of transport. It's just, like I said, it's very interesting to me that the parallels are there. That's all I have to say on that.
Bigfoot, nothing anyone says is a fact in Bigfoot. That's just it's a fact to you. If it happened to you, it's a fact to you. But until we have one and we can study it and we can sit there every 24/7 and research it legitimately, everything is hearsay. That's why you say that there are no real experts in Bigfoot. And if someone tells you, or if you see anybody with a title that says Bigfoot expert or expert in Bigfoot, don't even listen to that person. Change the channel, go on about your day, and do something more productive, like breathe. I mean,
watch paint dry.
Bigfoot, nothing is a fact until we actually catch one. We can sit here and we can theorize all day.
I was going to call you my Bigfoot expert. So,
I claim no expert status on anything.
I'm 100% there with you. I say that on my own podcast. I'm no expert in any field. Everything I'm saying is my opinion based on my observation and things that have been
Yep.
given to me firsthand.
Yep.
You feel free to agree with it, disagree with it as you like, because nobody knows for sure. And like Logan said, anybody that comes and says, well, I'm the authority on Bigfoot, they're probably full of gas.
Glenn has a point. Everybody knows more
Glenn,
about
yeah.
than me.
That's very true.
And I didn't mean that as in everybody's lying or whatever.
Right.
No,
I mean that as in when you yourself are going through and you're learning and you're trying to figure out what you want to do for Bigfoot, how you want to research, how you want to take the activity or whatever you get. I have friends that I trust wholeheartedly. If they tell me something happened, I'm going to believe it happened. I'm going to sit there and I'm going to question them about it. I'm going to make sure it makes sense in my head before I go out somewhere and go, oh yeah, that can happen. That can happen. Right. But I'm not going to listen to somebody that's on TV that's getting paid to tell me something. Mountain monsters. God forbid anybody took that show seriously.
Yeah.
Pay attention to what happens to you. Learn from yourself in this, and then also take into account what your trusted friends have happened to them. There's a reason I'm Bigfoot's most hated.
You're not. Well, no, I mean, I think you're onto something there. We all have our personal truths in life, and it's not just in regards to Bigfoot, it's in regards to the way we see things. And
Yeah.
I think that's important for everyone to realize is what's Logan's truth and Logan's experience is very different from Hadley's. And definitely different from Jen's and DA's. And it doesn't mean anybody's right or wrong. It just means that's your truth.
Correct.
And the great thing about truth is it's ever evolving as we grow and learn. I could be driving down the road tomorrow and Bigfoot could step out and wave, and that could have my experience. But at this point, I want to have a Bigfoot sighting, but I can't say that I have. I can tell you that what happened to me that made me think that's probably that, but I don't know.
I've always said that if I was ever going to have another Bigfoot encounter, my perfect Bigfoot encounter is I get out of my tent or I get out of my hammock, I go sit by the campfire and I look over and Bigfoot's carrying a tray full of blueberry muffins wearing an apron. And it's just like, here you go. And I'll be like, damn, that was easy. Let me get a picture real fast.
Bigfoot make muffin. Oh,
Bigfoot make muffin.
That's great. So back to the missing 411. One of the things that really fascinates me about that is the dogs won't track them.
The dogs
That's
are scared.
Dogs are intelligent. They, you can train dogs to track grizzly bears. You can train dogs to track mountain lions. But dogs are like any other animal. When they know there's something that's going to kill them, they're not going to go after it. And you have to break dogs down to get them to track grizzly bears. You've got to teach them that they are not just going to get killed. You're going to be there with them to kill that bear, because otherwise the bear's just going to maul them to death. I mean, a dog doesn't stand a chance against a large grizzly bear. But you can teach dogs to go after bigger prey items. But nobody's got a scent tracking school to teach them to go after a Bigfoot. And they don't know what the hell it is, and they figure pretty quickly they don't want anything to do with it.
And you go run coon dogs. You go do all this stuff. The dogs are normally, you got like 5, 6 dogs. Depending on what you're actually going after, most of the time you're going to have multiple dogs. Mm-hmm. It comes back down to there is an alpha of that pack. In theory, you think you're the alpha. Whichever dog that's there that is actually the alpha, when it gets scared, those other dogs get scared too. It doesn't matter if you're there. And when that dog realizes, hey, there's something bigger and badder than my owner out here, we're not going to go mess with it.
I have no problem believing that. So, let me see. Logan, you got anything you want to talk about?
If Jen has any questions.
I do need to jump off here, but I didn't know how long it was going to go. I apologize, Hadley. But I'd be curious to know, like, what's your next adventure? Like, what you guys are really curious about right now, what things got your attention, what area, that kind of thing.
Boykin Springs. I've had more activity lately in my one trip to Boykin Springs than I've had in my last 5-6 trips to Oklahoma. And it's sad to me that I can go 15 minutes that way and be in an area where I get reports every single week of something and not have anything happen. But I can go drive 3 hours to Boykin Springs and in 2 nights have vocalizations or have something happen. So like I was saying earlier, I want to try the Aztec death whistle idea.
That's a cool idea.
I want to try something that, because how many people do you think just walk out in the woods and start blowing a whistle like that? It's not something that gets done at least I can't even say the word regularly.
I want to try a dog whistle in LBL.
Yeah, the high frequency, like an actual dog whistle. Yeah.
Yep.
That would be interesting.
I will definitely be filming that.
I was going to say,
My next outing on October 4th, we've already booked the hotel room, and we're going up to the Kansas City area. About a half an hour, 45 minutes from Kansas City is a little town in Kansas called Stoll, Stoll, and supposedly in the cemetery on the outskirts of Stoll is a gate to hell. And I'm going to go up and check that out and film it and put it on my show.
Oh, fascinating. Okay.
That'd be pretty cool.
And then on the way back, we're going to stop in Lawrence, Kansas, and film a tribute video to Supernatural, because my wife and I love that.
You'll have to get Jen's contact information so she can see you when you're in Kansas City.
Awesome.
Yeah. Very good. Well, you guys, I love talking to you guys. It was great. I do have to jump off, but thank you so much. It's been interesting. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jen.
Have a good one.
Bye.
And then there were 3. So, let me see. I had a question that I was going to ask. I just kind of forgot. But Logan, what are you working on with Logan versus Kenny, or the Cryptid Connection?
Logan versus Kenny. We're taking the show down to just 2 episodes a month. Reduce workload for me and everything, because the whole Beaver Hook Productions, it picked up. So I'm juggling a lot of stuff on top of actual work job, So we're going to 2 episodes a month for LVK. 3 minutes is always every Wednesday. Anybody that wants to do it, send in an episode, send me a message, let me know you want to make an episode of it. Super simple, super easy.
That actually brings me back to my comment I was going to make. You haven't mentioned what you do for a living, and I want to circle back around to it, because when Hurricane Katrina happened, I heard there was a bunch of energy linemen that had seen a lot of Bigfoot signs and actual encounters down in Mississippi. So I was curious about, you work with water lines, don't you?
Yeah.
So do you ever have any type of sightings, or do any of your coworkers, have they had anything happen?
Not where we're at, no. I know some linemen. Most of the time you hear about that, you're either talking about a gas pipeline, because those they run those straight through whatever. They can only really go straight for the most part, unless you have a big turn. So they'll go and they'll clear cut a part of the land to lay that line. Well, we go back to the theory of, I just laid a pipeline in somebody's living room. They're going to be curious about it. You send, I don't know if you're familiar with how pipeline inspecting works. They will hand somebody a clipboard and tell them to start walking, and they will walk 10 miles through the woods searching for anything that's abnormal and mark it down on a clipboard. And the only thing that they have with them is that clipboard, a hard hat, and a water bottle, and like a snack. and they don't get to do anything until they reach that other destination 10 miles down the road when they get in their car and drive off. That's a lot of time for something to get curious and start trailing you out there. That's why you hear more of gas line people, electric line people having these encounters, and same thing with loggers, wood cutting people, because they're in that actual area that you would consider the Bigfoot home out there doing stuff, and Bigfoot's curious. It's going to come figure out what you're doing.
I can't remember if it was Bigfoot or Dogman. In Taylor, Mississippi, there was an electric worker, I think, that got stuck up.
That was a Dogman.
Dogman?
Mm-hmm.
You tell that story, D.A.?
There's actually a lot of sightings in and around Taylor, Mississippi of the Dogman. In fact, the account known as the Siege of Lockett Ranch happened there, where a family basically lost their land after a year-long battle with dogmen over the property. The dogmen didn't want them on the land, and they eventually ran them off. That's a great story. If you look up search the Siege of Lockett Ranch, it's a long story. It's a great story. But there was a lineman near Taylor, Mississippi, who was up in the bucket, working on a power line, and apparently I think it was 3 of the creatures came out and circled his truck and were like jumping up at him, and he wouldn't come down out of the bucket until they left.
And we didn't even talk about, what do you think a Dogman is?
I don't know exactly what it is. There's a lot of Native American lore that goes back just about as far as Bigfoot that talk about these wolf creatures. The Cherokee called them the Olunga Doglala, and I reference that a lot in my writing. But I think they've been around for a long time, and I think it ties into I think these creatures tie into the werewolf legend. I think the werewolf legend came from the Dogman. Like, you would have a guy disappear in the woods, this Dogman creature would show back up. They would assume it was the Dogman, the guy that turned into the Dogman. The guy comes back later and he's roughed up and can't explain what happened to him. So I think the legend of the werewolf grew from the Dogman creatures. In fact, next Saturday on my show, I'm going to have a guest from England who investigates Dogman sightings in England, and apparently there are quite a few. So they're not just isolated to the United States. They're all over the place. Glenn says shapeshifters. Glenn, I love your picture, man. You look like the dude from the Big Lebowski.
Yes.
I went to Nacogdoches and I had lunch with Glenn today.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we had a bunch of people there. But that is a good, what are they called? Skinwalkers.
Mm-hmm.
Skinwalkers. And once again, as an outsider, someone that's not into the paranormal, as someone who's not into Bigfoot, when you look into Bigfoot, you're sitting here and these people are going, "Oh, they're skinwalkers. They're people that change their
the dude about
there's these shapeshifters, and we have big hairy monkey men running around, and we have all this. We sound crazy. You got to remember,
you're not wrong.
But there's got to be something to it, because not only do you have the Native Americans or First Nations, whatever you want to call them, from North America talking about this stuff, you have people from all over the globe that have never met, their cultures have never met each other, talking about something similar.
Describing a very similar creature,
very
similar behaviors.
Yowie, Yeti, Orang Pendek, Bigfoot, all this stuff, it all ties in. Something is there. We were talking earlier about how they can be aggressive. A lot of times you hear a report, the ones in the southern part of America are more aggressive than the northern ones. The ones up north are normally bigger and they have more hair than the ones in the south. They're adapting to their climate. As any animal, there are different species. It can look different. I think the real question, what
is it?
The real question should be, how many Dogman sightings are misidentified Bigfoots, and how many misidentified Bigfoots are Dogman sightings?
That's true.
There's a lot of overlap. But the Choctaw said that Bigfoot and Dogman were mortal enemies.
Well, I think that there's more than Bigfoot, more than Dogman out there.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
And we just don't know what it is.
I think there's a much deeper world in the shadows that we're not really aware of.
Definitely. All right, guys. let me ask y'all this. I would love to have this conversation again sometime. Are y'all up for it?
I'm down.
Sure.
As my buddy Kerry says, I'm down like 4 flat tires.
All right.
Ooh, that's really down.
Well, DA, tell everybody what you're working on and where they can find you online.
I do a lot of different horror genres. I'm in the zombie genre. I do a lot of cryptid horror, sci-fi and fantasy. I'm most well known for my codename Wild Hunt books, which deal with a military unit that hunts dangerous cryptids. The Lakeview Man series, the Apex Predator series, and most recently the Nightmare Hunter series all deal with cryptids. And I've gathered information on cryptids for years, and I use that information to create the characters and the events in the books. So they are fiction books, but the behaviors of the creatures are based on things that I've read. So I try to make the behaviors of the creatures as real as possible, even though they're attacks and things like that. But they are works of fiction. But you can find all of my work at daroberts.net or under D.A. Roberts Author on Amazon. You can find me on Facebook at daroberts.net. I'm sorry, at facebook.com/darobertsauthor or on Twitter at darobertsauthor.
All right, Logan, what about you?
Right now, I just got 3 minutes in Logan versus Kenny, which obviously, if you go to Facebook, look up Beaverhook Productions, that's going to be the page for all that. Everything I do is going to be on there. Anything that I'm a part of is going to be on there. Other than that, if you just want to talk to me or get a hold of me, if you look me up on Facebook, just Logan Craft. Send me a message, send me a friend request, whatever you want to do. Other than that, I really don't have much. I make videos about boxes.
Yeah, DA sent me some graphics that I'm going to get you to put in the video for this, if that's okay.
Oh, yeah.
DA, if you got anything else, I'll get it to Logan. He's going to do a video that we'll put up on YouTube as well.
Oh, I've got tons of pictures and video I could send you. Actually, MK Davis, who did the analysis of the Patterson Gimlet footage, has my footage from that we took down at the Joe Bald Recreation Area, and he's digging into that to see what he can find in the image. So I'm hoping I've got some really good images coming out of that very soon. But MK is awesome. He was on my show last night, actually. And I have a show called DAX Machina every Wednesday and Saturday night at 9 p.m. You can find it on Facebook, and you can find it on my YouTube channel.
Definitely. And you have some of the, what is it? I can't think of what that guy, he lives in Mississippi, and I can't think of his name. But
the Dixie Cryptids, Cam Butner.
Yeah, you work with Cam and the lady that works with him, right?
Yeah, Naomi Finn.
Yeah.
Cam has narrated a couple of my stories. They've done some of my short stories and a novella and narrated on their channel. And Cam and Naomi are both going to be doing audio versions of some of my books, which will be available soon. And I will be doing some narrations on the Dixie Cryptid podcast here very soon.
Yes. And, again, subscribe to Wyrd Realities, and I will hook you up with all the stuff for Logan and for DA with their contact information. So that's going to do it for us. If you want to continue today's conversation and just say hi, anything, you can find us on facebook.com/groups/Wyrd Realities, and that's Wyrd with a Y. On social media, we're at Linktree's Wyrd Realities, and until next time, I'm going to ask that you stay weird, stay kind, and stay cool.
See ya.
Have a good night.
Before you go, be sure to leave us a comment and let our Wyrd team know how they're doing. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us to get notifications when we add new content. We are adding new content 3, 4, and sometimes 5 times a month. If you want to keep the conversation going or would like to learn more about our panel of hosts, be sure to check out our link tree. That's linktr.ee/Wyrd Realities. It links to our official Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and website.